I'd like to invite onto the stage Angela Wakelin, Heather Melville, Melanie Usibi and Lucy Lumsden and Maxine Benson again from Everywoman. Well, let's meet the panel and get a couple of questions to them straight away. Let's start with Angela Wakelin, Director of Risk and Operations at Santander now. Angela started off in banking straight after her A-levels, went into the NatWest local branch, worked at NatWest, worked up through RBS and has now done incredibly well at Santander, appointed Director of USB Operations and Risk, managing the business risk environment across UK banking, a very, very responsible job indeed. Angela, what in your opinion is the key attribute that women bring to business?
I think for me the best businesses are the ones that have a real good balance to them. I've been fortunate enough to kind of get to know a number of businesses, and I think having that balance is really important, and women bring something unique to that. We all bring something unique. I think those inherent practical skills often get described as us being able to multitask. I think that's really important, so definitely for my job in risk and operations, being able to do those are important. I think that sort of, Ross talked about nurturing and that sort of inherent emotional kind of sentiment. Those are really important as well, so you bring a good balance, particularly if you're then in a leadership team or on a board or wherever, or actually, you know, you're the team that you work in, you're bringing a balance and you're getting it right. So I think we come with those skills. And finally, I'd just say sort of, we talk about not being seen as pushy and whatever. The other way that can play is that humility, that modesty, actually is a kind of real skill in leadership as it comes through. So I think kind of really sort of some of the most admired leaders have that kind of humility. So those are attributes that I think are inherent in women that we should kind of make sure, you know, we bring through.
I think that humility and whether perhaps women need a bit more self-confidence than humility, we'll talk about further in the panel. Let's bring in Heather Melville. She's also in banking. She is the Director of Strategic Partnership at RBS. Now, as well as having a very senior job, she also mentors and coaches young women, serves as a JP and helps small businesses as well. And in October last year, she was awarded the International Alliance for Women, awarded her one of the World of Difference 100 awards. These are given to the top 100 women worldwide who've made a difference to the economic empowerment of women. Lovely to meet you, Heather. Let's talk to you briefly about networking. We heard a little bit about it there from Roz, that perhaps women should be giving up one evening a week for networking. It doesn't necessarily sit that easily with some women in terms of time commitment, or maybe just don't want to do it. What difference has it made to you in your career?
So actually, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't a good networker. I wouldn't have the job that I've got if I wasn't a good networker, and I think that's really quite important. And I think women on the whole, and I listen to them all the time, they sit there and they think, I haven't got time for this. But actually, these days, you've got to make time for it, because when your CV lands on someone's desk, it's not how long have you worked at an organisation, but it's how well are you known in the industry. And that's something that we really need to really invest in and make that happen. Also, what I'm also able to do my job quite well is I know a number of people on boards in a lot of the organisations that we want to do business with. And I'm able to take those relationships and help us grow our business internally. And I think that's the piece that women don't actually think they're capable of doing. And it's using those great soft skills to build and give back to the business. And I think that's where we kind of need to focus ourselves.
Soft skills. Melanie Usibi, management consultant as well as a Krispy Kreme donut. Thanks for joining us. You've got over 15 years of digital and financial services experience, specialising in transformation strategies, as you put it, for global organisations. You've also started up several initiatives and companies, including Fresh Ideas, a small business startup consultancy. In the facts and the research that we presented a little earlier on this morning, we saw that 63% of HR leaders want to see female middle managers driving their own advancement. How have you managed to do that yourself?
I think it's really important for you to decide on your destination, and even though the destination may not be that far ahead, decide on the destination and look to what people are doing at that destination. So when I was a management consultant at Ernst & Young and I was a junior executive, I looked at the manager level above me. I looked at their performance goals and I was working towards those performance goals. I wasn't working towards the performance goals that, you know, my organization had given to me. I looked one level above. And so when you declare that ambition to your HR counselor, to your manager, and tell them this is what you want to do with your life, you may not get the proper reception. You know what? They may not like that you're being that ambitious or that you're being that driven or that you're being that plain speaking. However, you have to be able to declare it to yourself and to others and to work to that level. And you know what? Things change, and that's okay. But you know what? Go to them with a goal and work towards that goal.
Good advice. Let's finally bring in Lucy Lumsden. Lucy's the head of comedy here at Sky. She was at the BBC for 11 years before, though, the corporation's first controller of comedy. We're not going to get her to tell any jokes today, though. She's produced an oppressive array of hits across the BBC, and here at Sky she's responsible for 80 hours a year of original British scripted comedy for Sky One, HD, Sky Living, Sky Atlantic and Sky Arts. Lucy, looking back over your career, what was a turning point for you that helped you take charge yourself of your path to success?
I mean, I think I fall into some of the categories of the negative that we've talked about, the blocks, because in a way I didn't set my sights on a goal to be this controller of comedy. It fell to me. I'd stayed at the BBC for a while, and actually lots of people move on. It's quite a transient place. And then my boss turned to me and said, well, you know, you've got to run the department now. And I was terrified, and I ran away, and I hid under the duvet. And I just turned to a few people around me, not my boss, actually, and I think this is so important, finding your partners in life and at work to sort of look for some reassurance. Can I do it? And you do realise at a certain stage of your career, you are the expert. There's no one else who knows it as well as you do. So yes, that was the moment that I had a boss who really put a lot of trust and faith in me, and then I was controller of comedy there for 4 years, and then I came to Sky.
So it was somebody else that kind of helped you realise within yourself that you could achieve?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think I was ambitious. I think I had quietly laid down foundations and worked diligently and built relationships. I don't really use that word networking. I just formed really solid relationships with talent, with writers, with channel controllers. And I suppose quietly, the hare and the tortoise, I was the tortoise that kind of finally got my moment. So that's the way it went for me.
You're talking about self-confidence, and that is a big thing, isn't it? It was something that was borne out in the research as well. What is it, do you think, that men are doing differently, better, that women aren't doing in terms of self-confidence? Why do men have this inherent self-confidence? Do they?
Well, I think a big part of it is that, let's be honest here, when a man is put in a position where there's a great job that he thinks he can do, he will go for it because he thinks of all the people around him that can help him to deliver that. We as women don't think that way. We think we have to be able to do everything to perfection. And I think there's 2 points for me. There's one about our inner confidence, and the other piece is around us saying, actually, I'm really good at doing this piece, but I need a team around me to help me deliver it. And it's changing that thought process. I think from a very early age, we're taught you have to be able to do every single thing. And when you go into the workplace, it's very hard to take that out of your mind. So then you doubt what you're capable of doing.
The thing that resonated with me was the imposter syndrome, and it happens kind of complete all the way through your well, it has happened through my career, and you do the next thing and you get, right, seriously, I'm going to get found out this next time, and then you get the next thing on, they're going to find me out definitely, and then actually you get comfortable. I think it's really important to get comfortable with yourself and your skills, and that you all have, that you have individually, that you have as a woman, that you have as a man. So I don't think men do it better. They just do it differently. So, and that's fine. That's fine.
Melanie, how have you conquered self-doubt? We heard Ros there talking about having your script in your head, having your story in your head, and being able to say it. Did you ever employ that tactic?
Not really. Unfortunately, I lean towards the perfectionism kind of angle, and I am a heavy-duty researcher. I am an internet person, and so now I know that even if I don't know it, so right now I've just gotten a puppy. I have to learn how to wash him properly and train him. I don't know how to do that. However, I know the internet does, and so I'm a heavy researcher. That's what I do in terms of the self-doubt. So I'm a very comfortable place to say, even if I don't know it, there are books, there is Google, there are ways for me to just reach out to people online, forums, for me to learn the information that I don't know. So that's what I do first, and then it just kind of grows and manifests from there.
Maxine, talking about self-doubt, we're talking about all the demands on women. Is it the case that women in the workplace do have more demands? It's not something that research focused on, but it was certainly something, childcare, flexibility, that was brought up by the audience here. Is it the case that women are more likely to just simply have more things on their mind?
They do have more things on their mind, and they make it their business to have it be their responsibility. I mean, let's be honest, often it is, but they do still take the lion's share of the responsibility for the other things that are going on in their lives. But I think that flexible working today is not a gender issue. I think that everybody in the workplace wants to work more flexibly, and I think that we are coming round to this way of thinking that actually it isn't just a childcare issue. Certainly we're going to see more and more people at the other end of the scale having responsibility for parents, older relatives, but I think also people have other things in their lives. I think that was what we talked about earlier on, about ambition can be beyond work. It can be about the other things that are important and improve your lives. Maybe it's that I need more time to train to go and run a marathon, but there could be other things like that we want to do, and I think we just have to have a greater respect for the fact that other people have lives that are beyond work, and we need to be more flexible about them. It's not a gender issue.
And that is something that was also raised in the audience, that there are women out there who want to do well in their career, but they also want to do well at home. They want to have a big home life as well. They don't want to just be doing one thing or the other. Lucy, do you think it is possible for women to balance that and still achieve at a very high level?
Of course, it's possible. I think it's really hard, though. I mean, I'm constantly recalibrating it and figuring it out. I'm very lucky. I've got a husband who's self-employed, and he's really flexible. So he does all the school gate stuff, and he runs that whole ship, and we've properly had to swap roles. I mean, in a way, it's a little bit of a shame we've completely swap roles. That's where the negotiation comes in, because I kind of go, miss a little bit of that as well. I don't want to be the imposter at the school gates, you know, in the suit about to rush off for the meeting. So it's, and I really struggled with it. I've struggled with it all the way through. My mother stayed at home, was a housewife, and so I didn't really have anyone in my life who had had a career and had worked and had their own money. And it's always the men had the money, and you always had to sort of go to them to ask for something to, you know. Anyway, it's a big story, this, but I think we just need more examples of it working well. And that's going to come in all different shapes and sizes and suit people in different ways. But I've had to find my own way. I didn't have the book to turn to.
You mentioned examples of it going well. We saw the fact about role models, that women think they're important, but actually, in reality, women don't feel that the women above them are helping them. It is filtering down. Heather, you talked about mentoring and its vital importance for you. You say you wouldn't be here without networking. What difference has mentoring also made to your life?
So I think I've had great mentors throughout my career, and even now I still have them. And I think a big part of that is an honest relationship. And there's a whole piece around reverse mentoring that's important as well. So it's great us telling somebody much junior about how they could shape things, but also it's also important to get some feedback from them on how you are and some of the challenges that are happening around you. Because sometimes I think as leaders and women, particularly if we've gone through that challenge and our lives are okay now, we forget what that journey has been like. And when a young person comes into the environment, male or female, because these days men take responsibility for their children as well. I've got 2 sons that have got children, so I can say that quite openly. We forget actually some of the challenges that they may face because we've gone through that hurdle and it's okay. And so I'm a real strong supporter of having role models, both men and women, and having them speak openly about some of the things that they do. So actually, I don't want to see anybody hiding at 3 o'clock and sneaking out the door to go home. If they're a senior level, I want them to be able to say, good night, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I need to go home and take the children home. Or I need to go to the doctors and take my parents. Or actually, I've just got to go home and do something. And actually, when they start to behave that way, naturally everybody else in the organisation thinks, do you know what? It's okay for me to say that I'm going to go off and take the children to the doctors. Because we as women, and I know that having brought up my own 2 children, you feel guilty because you think everybody else is around you thinking, I can't have the summer holidays because she wants to have the summer holidays. That means if her children are sick, she's going to get the time off. And sometimes that's not how it is. So I do think we need to be really honest about when we're coping very well and actually sometimes when we're not coping very well. And also what I think is really quite powerful, I've heard women say who are quite senior who have actually said, I think I've got it all, but I really haven't got it all because I feel quite guilty that I didn't see my child's first play because I thought I needed to be this person in the boardroom and I need to be there at all times. So I think it's really important that we are, we're authentic and show the real journey, what it's like to be a parent.
So really changing the culture from the top, showing what reality is like. We've got some Twitter questions that have come in to us. One from Kate Farrow. She says, what advice would the panel give to women who feel they are only one woman amongst many men at work? Perhaps Melanie, I'll ask you that one.
So I've worked for large consultancies and financial services for my whole life, and I was always the only woman, and we traveled around the world together from San Francisco to Hong Kong to New York to Brazil, and it was really tough, and it was tough not to get a hard shell. I can't lie about that. I was trying to be something else and someone else for so long, and it was only when my mentor came to me and she said, I don't like what you're turning into. You're not the woman that you when you first moved back home to London. You're not that woman anymore. You've lost some of that, and I don't know where it went. And it is actually, I think it's a constant battle. It's almost, speaking to what Heather said earlier, it's a constant mask. It's a mask when I'm a sister, I am a daughter, I am a worker at work, and you have to kind of keep on revolving those masks, and you have to find the balance. There are some things that I love when I work with men and only men. There's some directness, there is some kind of straight to the point, get to this, the business case, the numbers, and I love that. But on the other hand, I also love my more kind of client relationship, friendly side as well, and I do attribute that to my more feminine side in terms of my collaborative nature. I think it is a balance, and I'm grabbing things from being a sister, being a mother, being a daughter, being a worker at work, and being a friend as well. So that's how I've handled it, really, is balancing it out.
Angela, do you think in the world of finance, I suppose especially, women need to be more like men to succeed, or can we saw that there was, for example, a memo that went out to one of the big banks recently about giving women advice and presentations, and it was things like lower your voice, dress more soberly. It was essentially be more like a man. That was how to succeed. But is that the key? Is it being more male, or is it pushing the femininity?
No, I come back completely to, the best businesses will have the right balance of people in their organisation, absolutely. And, I was in corporate banking for a large part of my career, so kind of very sort of male, probably generally male-dominated. And same as Melody, you go through, I've gone through a phase, okay, and it's just like anybody, I adapt. So if I'm a bit more like this and whatever, you feel that you will be more successful, but actually you put a lot more pressure on yourself if you're not kind of being yourself, and so I think you can find yourself in an environment, and definitely some sectors and some industries where that will be more prevalent, but I think the real truth comes through if we get the right balance of characteristics in there. So it's difficult. But you have to be true to yourself. That's when you're operating at your optimum, when you're yourself.
It's very tiring trying to keep a facade up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to share something with you. I was at a very senior lunch yesterday, which was with clients on our 11th floor in the building, and it was fantastic because I walked into this room, and typically it's full with men. And so everybody kind of knows where you're going to put the lady right in the middle. Well, they were in a mess yesterday because there were about 7 women, and they were trying to work out how to locate the women beside the men. And I stood there and I said, what a fantastic problem to have. And it's one you've never had before because you've never had that many women sitting around the table. So I think really and truly we are punching our way through. There are some challenges that are happening, but we need to feel confident when we get there. There are times when I have felt like a fraud. Okay, they happen quite a lot of the time. We have those internal rumblings which say you're not good enough or you haven't been there long enough. But actually, all the other women that I know, and actually all the other men I know, have those same challenges. They have those same conversations. But it's only when we talk to them and they say, don't worry about it because I felt that way, will you get your confidence back? And I think that's something that we need to communicate to all the young women that are coming up. It's okay to have those moments of self-doubt. Let them be moments, but share them with somebody who's actually worked through it and don't own it. Because actually when you own it, somebody else might see the confidence in you, but that lack of confidence that you've got comes out, and that's when they spot you.
Lucy, you talked about your self-confidence a little bit earlier, and one of the key bits of the research that both the HR managers and the women agreed was that senior role models were very, very important, but also it showed that senior role models, female role models, aren't necessarily helping the women below them. What do you think organisations can do to try and help it filter down?
It's so tricky. I mean, I have to say there have been female bosses in my life who've not been supportive at all, and there is something there that we need to address. There's the ball breaker women who've got to the top, and there's sort of not enough room for anyone else. And there is definitely a culture out there of that, and that's really, really got to change. I think that's a generation below had to work hard to get where they are now. So that needs to sort of be spotted and kind of got rid of, really. And I'm really glad that I didn't try and emulate those qualities, because at the end of the day, you get your next job because, well, I got my job here at Sky because I found a very, very good core of people who we shared the same values, and I was sort of ignoring these rather negative, over-ambitious voices around me. They were sort of sending out the wrong signal, and that's something to really hold on to. Sort of be true to yourself and try and avoid that kind of negative voice around you. And I do think there's a culture, and cultures take their time to shift. Because we're going through a phase where it was really, really hard for women to get to the top. Hopefully it'll get less so.
Actually, one of the things that the research showed was that in terms of role models, if they weren't the right kind of role model in terms of their style or their work-life balance or their own backstory, that women further down didn't necessarily identify with them.
Role models are everywhere in an organisation. And I think that we can be looking to women, even if they've only been in the workplace 3, 4, 5 years, to see how it is that they're conducting themselves and the confidence with which they're navigating their careers. They can be fantastic role models for women that have been in the workplace 20 years. We can all learn from each other's styles and the way that we're navigating.
I know at Sky News that we try very, very hard to get a really good gender balance when we're getting guests on. But producers will tell you that often you ring up a university department, you ring up a big organisation, and the women don't feel that comfortable about coming on. We often really, really have to persuade them when we get them on, and they're absolutely great, but it's that first bit of persuasion, isn't it? Melanie, why do you think women still just feel... It just goes back to the self-confidence thing, do you think?
I think it goes back to the points we were making originally about self-confidence and how we feel that we need to know everything about a certain topic in order to be able to call ourselves an expert. So it was only after 15 years of being a banker, of working in the branch, in the call center, in the operations, and in the front office, then I could say, I know banking. Really? Did I really need 15 years to call myself an expert? Some people call themselves experts after, declaring it on the internet these days and having very profitable businesses. So I think that it is definitely about the confidence. Women definitely have the knowledge. They know we like the detail. We like going into the background and knowing all the elements of a problem. And it's just up. There's a certain onus on us to put ourselves forward for that, because people are looking for us, and we have to kind of, to be colloquial about it, swag it out. We have to have a little bit of swagger and just walk out what we know, because we know it.
As my granny says, shy girls getting out. Let's broaden it out to the audience, though, now. I'm sure there must be some of you out there who've got some questions. Could you raise your hand if you've got a question for our panel, please?
You've talked a lot about role models. I'm interested to know if you have had a role model that had a really positive impact on you as you were coming through your career, and what they did to have that impact.
Yeah, good question. Let's put that one to Angela first.
I mean, two that spring to mind. One who is now my boss today, who kind of I believe totally has the right sort of moral compass in life in terms of what we're doing. I believed in what he was trying to build in a business, what he was trying to do in our industry. So absolutely, he's somebody, and he's the guy that took a risk with me. And then also one of my peers, actually, who taught me that in the world of risk and operations, just concentrate on the sort of 6 inches in front of your face and you can kind of get there. So both who kind of inspired me and I looked to. So
interesting that your role model doesn't have to be a woman.
Not at all.
Exactly.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm. Melanie, who were your role models?
My role models, I have a plethora of them, based on the varying kind of stages of my life. And so I can't name all of them, but I would say that do not limit yourself to just one, and don't be afraid to change your role models or your focus role model based on where you are in life. And so when I was a management consultant, I had 4 management consultant partner women and men that I was looking to, and they were the epitome of everything I wanted. And then when I said I'm going to leave management consultancy or the big 4 and go and start my own business, then all of a sudden my role models changed. And so I would say that with women, don't dedicate yourself, don't commit yourself to this view that this is what we're going to be when we're 60. Today, this is what I feel like doing, and tomorrow that may change. And so I think it's also about having just a group of role models that you're looking at to represent the different elements that you have within you that you want to grow.
Actually, it's quite funny because one of the people who's been in my life, she's not here anymore, was my mum, and it was always about being honesty. And when anybody told me that I couldn't do something, she always said, you find a way to make sure you can do. And that's what I've done throughout all my career. Whenever somebody said to me, I don't think you can do that, this little person in my head has said, I'm going to show you how. And I think that's what we need. We need to get that person on our shoulders. And then when I'm doing that, I'm also thinking about, now, who am I going to choose that's going to show me how? But I'm also thinking about, how am I going to make them look good by showing me how? True. So there's a two-way thing. It's always, and it's a sales game. I'm a saleswoman, but it's always about thinking, what's in it for that person? Yeah. So I'm doing quite a lot of work. I mean, I'm really proud of a network that we set up in RBS, which with Max and Karen were there at the very beginning when we had no money whatsoever, no sponsorship. Today we have over 10,000 members in 31 countries, and we created something that somebody on the board of RBS said, I want to support. Now, we did that because it helps them and it helps the organisation, but most importantly, it helped all the women and all the people in the organisation. So my whole thing is, when somebody told me, no, you can't do that, I just thought, just watch and see how.
Fantastic. Lucy, you talked a little bit about your role models a little bit earlier, didn't you, and about your employers that have supported you. We've had another tweet giving reaction to something you said, talking about you and your partner fully swapping roles. This is from Natalie Cooper. She says, it's great to hear you talking about that. Often the stranger at the school gate is myself. So it is chiming with a lot of the people that we've heard from. So I just want to ask you all one very, very brief question last. What's the one bit of advice that you wish you'd been given when you started out, Lucy?
I think don't worry what people think. I think I had lots of little voices in my head that were sort of doing me down, doing myself down. Actually, it was only in my head. It was ridiculous. So yeah, just try and put that negative voice at bay. I read a really brilliant book called The Artist's Way. I really recommend it. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Do have a look at this. $9.95. It's not expensive, but it's all about. Actually, it's about creativity, but it's about hearing your inner voice, believing in it, knowing it's there, and finding a way to express it. And that you don't have. It's not banking. It's not comedy. You can have it in any walk of life, and that's about just feeling really confident about your inner self. It really helped me.
Melanie, what would be your one bit of advice?
Mine would be know your worth. Know what you bring to the table. Know how much organizations are fighting to find you and to promote you right now. So we can talk about all this other stuff, but right now they're in trouble. They do not have enough women at board level. They do not have enough women represented in general. And so that's why I think know your worth is the best. Know your worth in terms of how much you get paid, as well as what you bring to the table and what you can do for the organization.
Heather?
I've often thought, and this happened to me once when somebody was interviewing me and they had the cheek to ask me, having invited me to an interview, why I'd like to work for them. And I suddenly thought to myself, you asked me to come here, so actually I turned it back on them. And I said, why should I leave a great job and come and work for you? You said it back to me. And actually it was quite interesting. It got me the job, but it also made them think about, actually, why do I want her to come here? And they had to reinforce it to me. So actually, I walked in feeling I haven't got a hope in hell of getting this job, because the panel was very pale, male and white, and there was 5 of them and there was only me. And the whole thing is really about, and you know, we face that all the time. So my one thing is thinking about, actually, when I'm into an interview procedure or somebody's challenging whether or not I'm good enough at something, let me turn it back and say, actually, I can bring something that you probably haven't got. Not in a bolshy way, but in a way that actually brings them on side and engages with them.
Fantastic. And Angela, finally, your brief piece of advice.
Yeah, just know yourself and be yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much. Fascinating stuff. It's been great, hasn't it? I've really learned some interesting things today. Thank you very much. Angela, Heather, Melanie and Lucy, if I can ask you all, please, to retake your seats, and Maxine as well. Thank you.